Hello, Radiant Leo. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the universe is gently pushing you toward a moment that changes everything, even if you don't know exactly what that moment is yet? This is not just another horoscope reading. This is a sacred alignment between your spirit and divine timing. And if you're here watching this right now, it's because you were meant to hear something today. Something real. Something powerful. And yes, something beautiful. I'm so honored to welcome you back to Eternal Mindfulness, or maybe welcome you for the very first time. Either way, the energy that brought you here is no accident. And Leo, you know better than anyone, when the stars speak, it's never random. If your heart has been whispering lately, if you've been feeling a quiet sense that a major shift is near, that something old is falling away, or that your light has been dimmed for too long, you're not imagining things. The energy surrounding you today is speaking in symbols, in synchronicities, in signs. And together, we're going to uncover what that means for you. In the next few minutes, we're going to dive deep into what the cosmos is whispering to your sign. This is your moment to pause, breathe, and receive. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you remember who you are, and why this moment matters. So before we go further, take a breath with me. Feel yourself grounded in the now. And if you feel called, drop a comment below. Share an angel number that's been following you lately, or simply write, "I'm ready for something beautiful." This is how we tell the universe we're listening. This is how we align our free will with divine flow. Leo, your presence here means everything. Truly. Whether this is your first video or your 100th, I want to say thank you. Thank you for showing up with your open heart. For your likes, your shares, your subscriptions. They are the heartbeat of eternal mindfulness. They are what allow us to keep showing up for you, day after day, with messages that uplift and transform. So please, let me take just a moment to express my deepest, most sincere gratitude for your presence. Your support, your energy, your light, it makes all the difference. This is more than just a video. It's a community. It's a soul connection. And you're part of it. And trust me when I say this, Leo, you're going to want to stay with me until the very last second of today's reading, because what the universe is about to reveal? It's not just a message. It's a door. A new beginning. A stunning, soul-awakening turning point that starts right here. Let's go deeper. There's a quiet moment, often overlooked, that holds more power than any grand transformation, the moment you finally pause. Not to run, not to fix, not to prove, but to listen. For you, Leo, this moment has arrived. After all the fire you've offered the world, the passion, the presence, the protection, something within you is softly echoing, asking if the flame you carry for others has been burning you from the inside. This sacred pause isn't about stopping. It's about recalibrating. Like the lion returning to its cave, not in retreat, but in wisdom, you're being invited to come back to the source of your own light. In a world that celebrates constant motion, this invitation may feel strange, even uncomfortable. But true power never needs to shout. It simply radiates from within, steady and unshakable. Astrologically, when Leo is stirred by cosmic tides like the ones moving now, the call is rarely external. The outer shifts, in career, in relationships, in body, are only mirrors. The deeper transformation is always an inner realignment between the identity you've shown and the truth you've quietly known. This energy is asking you to stop pretending that strength must always be loud, or that being needed is the same as being seen. And so, the question arrives gently, like a bell at dawn. Are you truly here, right now, or still haunted by echoes of what could have been or what should be? The future, after all, is not a place you arrive at. It's a frequency you attune to. The more you root into presence, the more clearly you hear the direction that was always waiting. There is profound wisdom in tending to your energetic boundaries, not as a defense, but as an act of self-respect. What if caring for your energy is the purest form of service? What if by allowing yourself to rest, to reset, to say, this is mine and that is not, you are restoring a sacred balance that ripples out far beyond you? The turquoise light surrounding you is not just a metaphor. In energetic work, turquoise resonates with clarity, integrity, and self-expression. It's the voice of truth before it is filtered, the boundary that isn't rigid but compassionate. When you imagine this light around you, you're not escaping the world, you're becoming more available to it, more clearly, more cleanly, more completely. Just like breath flows in and out without effort, your energy is meant to circulate, not be siphoned endlessly in the name of loyalty, approval, or habit. There is nothing noble about depletion. And there is nothing selfish about returning to your center before giving again. This is not resistance. It is wisdom. Sometimes, we mistake burnout for weakness or silence for failure. But a flame cannot burn bright unless it's given space to breathe. And what you're doing now, this soft recalibration, this listening to your own inner cadence, is what allows your brilliance to return not as performance, but as essence. You are not dimming. You are becoming deliberate. With each breath, ask gently, what is truly mine to carry? Let that become your mantra. The rest can fall away, not in abandonment, but in reverence. Because when you care for the vessel, the light inside not only survives, it expands. So stay in this space just a little longer. You don't need to rush into the next version of yourself. Let her rise from within, one clear breath, one clean boundary at a time. This is not a detour. This is the way. What happens when a lion forgets it's a lion? It doesn't stop being powerful, it simply forgets how to walk in its power. The King of Wands steps into this space today, not as a distant archetype, but as a mirror, held up to remind you, Leo, that what you seek is not beyond you. It lives within. The fire you've been waiting for? You are the match. The vision you've longed to follow? It's already carved into your heartbeat. This is the card that doesn't whisper. It arrives with presence. It doesn't ask politely. It reminds you, through posture, through silence, through action, that leadership is not something granted. It's remembered. There's a reason this energy is arising now, after the stillness of reflection you were just invited into. You see, the stillness wasn't an end, it was a preparation. We're not meant to stay curled inward forever. Just as the breath eventually must exhale, your presence is being called outward. But differently this time. Not as a performance, not for approval, not as an obligation, but as a declaration, I know who I am. True power doesn't demand the spotlight. It is the spotlight. And yet, how many times have you paused, waiting for permission to be fully seen? How many moments have you quieted your brilliance just to make others more comfortable? The King of Wands asks you to stop waiting, to stop shrinking, to stop apologizing for the boldness of your vision or the way your heart refuses to play small. But here's where it deepens, because this energy isn't about ego. It's about alignment. The kind of leadership being asked of you now is not loud, not flashy, not dominating. It's clear. It's grounded. It arises from a place that has tasted silence, that has walked through shadows and chosen integrity over illusion. That kind of clarity doesn't just lead, it liberates. There's a teaching that says the highest form of discipline is being faithful to what is true, even when no one's watching. That's what this moment invites. To rise not for recognition, but for the sheer joy of embodying your truth. That's the fire the King of Wands brings, not chaos, but clarity, not rebellion, but realization. It's also important to understand the relationship between vision and action here. Your ideas, your intuition, your creative spark, they're not meant to stay trapped in the dream realm. They want form. They want movement. And they want you to lead the way. But not all action is equal. What's being asked isn't hustle. It's conscious motion. It's choosing what matters and moving toward it with the full presence of your being. No more scattered energy. No more half-hearted maybes. Just a clear, calm yes. In certain traditions, there's the belief that the true master is one who walks like the mountain and flows like the river, unyielding in purpose, yet gentle in presence. This is your invitation. To lead without forcing. To shine without seeking. To move through the world not needing to prove anything, because you've already met yourself in the stillness, and what you found is enough. So ask yourself today, with soft honesty, what are you waiting for? Who are you still seeking approval from? What version of you are you afraid to become, simply because it doesn't fit someone else's expectations? And when you're done asking, take one simple, clear step. Not for them. For you. You don't need a miracle. You are the miracle. And when you stop negotiating with your own light, when you stop asking for validation and start walking as if your life itself is a sacred act, then the world begins to shift around you. Not because it suddenly believes in you, but because you finally believed in yourself. Sometimes the most powerful transformations begin not with grand declarations, but with a quiet whisper, "This is no longer mine." That recognition alone can be the first breath of liberation. As we move deeper into your journey, Leo, the appearance of death and the tower isn't here to frighten you or foretell doom, it's here to free you. These cards, often misunderstood, are not harbingers of chaos but invitations to clarity. Together, they signal that something within or around you has completed its purpose. And when something completes, we don't mourn it with fear. We bow in gratitude, release it gently, and make space for what is true now. There's an ancient teaching that says, clinging is the root of all suffering. And what these energies are asking is simple but profound. Can you let go of what you've already outgrown? A belief, a title, a version of yourself that used to serve you but now weighs you down like armor in a season meant for flight. Change, after all, is not a disruption of who you are. It's the revelation of who you've always been beneath the stories, the expectations, the roles you've played too long. Death in this context is not an end. It's an exhale. It's the final leaf letting go in autumn so that new life can eventually bloom. It's a sacred pause between chapters, one that honors what was without dragging it into what will be. And while endings can stir discomfort, especially for a heart as loyal as yours, they are also a threshold. One that only opens when you are willing to walk through it without trying to carry what no longer fits. Then comes the tower, bold and unyielding. Unlike the quiet invitation of death, the tower is the moment truth no longer waits for your permission. It arrives as a revelation, a disruption, a necessary dismantling. Not to punish, but to realign. It tears down the structures, internal or external, that were built on shaky ground. You may not have realized how much of your foundation was made of compromise, denial, or fear until now. And though the collapse can feel sudden, its grace lies in the clarity it offers. This cannot hold you anymore. But here's the most liberating part. Once the tower falls, you are no longer responsible for holding up something that was never meant to last. There's relief in that. There's a strange kind of peace in the rubble because now, you are free to build something real. Not performative. Not borrowed. But soul-aligned, piece by piece, from the center of your knowing. This energy doesn't require you to act recklessly or burn bridges. It invites a subtler bravery, the courage to release with mindfulness, to witness the unraveling without resistance. There is a profound kind of stillness that comes with surrender. Not defeat. Surrender. A soft, open-handed way of saying, I trust the space I'm creating. So if you've been feeling an internal tension lately, a quiet discomfort, a growing restlessness, don't push it aside. It may be the very doorway you've been praying for. Ask yourself, gently, what is pressing against the edges of your life? What part of you is asking to be freed, not fixed? Remember that nothing real is ever lost. Only illusions fall away. What remains after death and the tower is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of the part where you no longer abandon yourself to belong. And Leo, that is where your real fire begins. Not in what you can carry, but in what you finally choose to lay down. Fulfillment isn't something that arrives with applause or perfect timing. Often, it comes softly, like morning light through a window, not because everything has fallen into place, but because you have. After the crumbling of old patterns, after the letting go, there's a stillness that makes room for something more honest. And that's where the energy of the Nine of Cups steps in, not as a prize for performing, but as the natural state of being when you no longer run from yourself. This card, often called the wish card, is frequently misunderstood. People expect magic, some external miracle that fixes what's broken or fills what's missing. But the true essence of the Nine of Cups is contentment that arises when you stop chasing the version of happiness that was never yours to begin with. It's what happens when you realize that joy isn't a destination. It's a relationship, with yourself, with the present moment, with your own quiet acceptance of enough. And yet, that realization doesn't arrive without contrast. This kind of satisfaction is only possible because you've stood in the fire of transformation. You've seen what doesn't last, what doesn't serve, and you chose not to cling. That choice, to let go instead of grasp, is what opened the space for peace to find you. It's the inner smile that comes when you finally stop negotiating with your worth. When you eat because you're nourished, not because you're distracted. When you laugh because your soul is light, not because you're trying to appear okay. Then comes judgment, not as punishment or finality, but as awakening. The moment when your inner compass sharpens and points to the truth you've always known. Judgment isn't about being judged. It's about seeing clearly. About looking at your past, all of it, not to regret, but to reclaim. Every choice, every mistake, every tender break in your heart has led to this awareness. And now, instead of carrying it like a burden, you carry it as wisdom. From the perspective of cosmic timing, judgment marks a threshold moment. A call to step forward not as the person you were expected to be, but as the person you're finally ready to become. It asks you to take radical responsibility for your own joy. Not to wait for permission. Not to outsource your peace. But to recognize that everything meaningful begins with awareness. There's a teaching that says liberation isn't found in the escape from pain, but in the realization that you are not your pain. That you are the sky, not the weather. This is the heart of the judgment card. It doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence. It invites you to meet yourself again, this time with compassion. To forgive without forgetting, and to grow without guilt. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you otherwise. So if you're wondering what this moment is about, why you feel the shift, the pause, the quiet fullness, it's because you're finally aligned with the version of yourself that's not performing, proving, or pretending. You're showing up in your own life, not just surviving it. And that is where the real reward begins. Take a moment now to reflect. What brings you quiet joy? Not the kind that impresses others, but the kind that makes you feel real. Share it below. Your voice might be the light someone else needs today. Because joy, just like healing, expands when it's shared, gently, honestly, without force. Just like you. Not everything that matters announces itself with thunder. Some of the most important shifts in our lives begin in the quiet, consistent choices we make each day, the meals we eat, the breath we take before reacting, the conversations we choose to have instead of avoid. After moving through the deep internal transformations brought by death, Tower, 9 of Cups, and Judgment, what comes next isn't dramatic. It's deliberate. It's the practice of integration, letting your insights show up in your body, your relationships, your routines. Health, for example, is often thought of as a checklist: eat well, sleep enough, move more. But in a deeper sense, well-being is about harmony, the body and mind acting as allies, not opponents. When you prioritize restful sleep, you're not just restoring energy. You're creating space for your nervous system to soften, for your inner world to settle. Drinking warm water in the morning isn't just hydration, it's a quiet ritual of awakening with intention. Even something as simple as avoiding coffee on an empty stomach becomes an act of kindness toward the self, a refusal to jolt your system into stress before it's ready. These are small choices with big consequences, because they teach your body that it's safe to exist in peace. Wearing a color like turquoise, for instance, can also support emotional clarity. While it may seem subtle, colors influence how we feel and how we respond to the world around us. Turquoise, in particular, is associated with calm, emotional flow, and clear communication. Imagine it not as decoration but as alignment, a way to gently remind your energy that it doesn't need to absorb everything. That you're allowed to feel without drowning, to care without collapsing. In work, this sense of presence becomes even more valuable. You're likely entering a phase of heightened creativity, where ideas flow not because you force them, but because you've made space for them. Creativity, after all, isn't a fire drill. It's a natural extension of clarity. That idea you've been holding back, the one you've convinced yourself isn't ready or isn't perfect. It's time. Not because it's finished, but because it wants to breathe. Sometimes, what you've been hiding is exactly what someone else is waiting for. And if you've been considering a shift, in role, path, or pace, this energy is a green light. Not because it guarantees success, but because it invites alignment. When your external life begins to match your internal knowing, that's when things start to move. But remember, movement without presence is just motion. What you want is meaningful progress. That begins with saying yes to what feels right, not just what looks good. In terms of finances, the energy supports new opportunities, but only if you're willing to meet them with open hands and clear eyes. That means looking at your inner stories about money, safety, and self-worth. Are you operating from fear, or from value? Sometimes we think we need to cling tightly in order to protect ourselves, when in fact, the real strength is in trusting our ability to generate, to adapt, to receive. Relationships, too, are being gently restructured. If you're single, you may feel the presence of something deeper approaching, not a fantasy, but a connection built on truth. But that requires you to show up vulnerably, to risk being seen not for your image, but for your essence. And if you're already partnered, this is a time to check in. Are you sharing your full self, or just the parts that feel safe? Avoiding difficult conversations may seem easier in the moment, but over time, they create invisible distance. And you, Leo, deserve a connection that breathes, not one that holds its breath. All of this, health, work, finances, love, isn't separate. It's one continuous mirror, reflecting how aligned you are with your truth. The invitation now is to live from that truth, gently, consistently, courageously. Not someday. Today. There's something quietly powerful about realizing you no longer need to chase your transformation, that it's already unfolding within you, breath by breath, moment by moment. You don't have to force the light to arrive. You simply have to stop turning away from it. And Leo, if you've made it to this point in the video, that means a part of you is already waking up to a truth that can no longer be denied. You are no longer who you used to be. So many of us wait for permission to evolve. We think we need a sign, a moment, an external shift to finally begin. But what if the only permission you need is your own? What if everything you've experienced, the breakdowns, the breakthroughs, the days of silence, the nights of questioning, was preparing you to receive what you once thought was impossible? Right now, life isn't asking you to be more. It's asking you to remember who you already are when you're not doubting, not dimming, not pretending. And maybe, just maybe, the most beautiful version of your life doesn't begin with adding more. It begins with trusting what's already here. That whisper of intuition. That desire to rest. That tug in your heart to speak honestly, to act courageously, to choose differently this time. Ask yourself, what are you still holding on to that no longer belongs in the story you're becoming? Is it an old belief about your worth? A habit of self-sacrifice? A relationship dynamic that silences your fire? What if letting go isn't loss, but alignment? What if surrender isn't weakness, but wisdom? And as you reflect, I want to invite you to do something small, yet profoundly powerful. In the comments below, share a word, a number, or even a symbol, something that captures where you are in this moment. Maybe it's a sparkling heart, maybe it's, I'm ready, or maybe it's just a breath of truth. Whatever it is, let it be a sign to yourself, and to this community, that you are choosing to be present with what's real. Because you're not alone in this. This space, eternal mindfulness, is a living, breathing circle of souls walking the same path, toward clarity, healing, and self-trust. And your presence here matters. Your energy shapes this space. Every like, every share, every subscription is more than support. It's a ripple that carries this message to someone else who needs it too. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. For showing up. For listening. For daring to imagine that your life can feel better, freer, more aligned. If this video spoke to your soul, let it be the beginning, not the end, of your reflection. Rewatch it if you need to. Save it. Share it with someone who might need this reminder. And most of all, remember this: the miracle isn't waiting outside of you. It's already arriving. But you have to allow it in. You have to believe, deeply, gently, without resistance, that you are worthy of beautiful things. Not someday. Today. Not when you're perfect. Now. Until next time, keep trusting the fire in your chest and the peace in your breath. You're not behind. You're right on time.